Watching news at Prime, let's get into this important conversation. Now, there appears to be no improvement in the country's reading crisis. A report from the 2030 Reading Panel has revealed that 81% of pupils in grade 4 are unable to read in any language, and that's to read for meaning. Let's talk more about this, and we're joined by the author of the 2030 Reading Panel report, Siphumelele Lucwaba. Good evening to you, and thank you for joining us in studio tonight.
Good evening, Gloria, and thank you for having me.
Let's start with the methodology in conducting this particular survey, if I could call it that. How did you go about this?
So the 2030 Reading Panel report actually synthesizes existing data within the sector each year. Right, so the number of 81% of learners cannot read for meaning is actually the big pills number that we had a few years ago from 2021. The new data that we're seeing coming from the DBE's own Siphumelele National Survey is that only 30% of learners are reading in grade level from grades 1 to 3. And what the other things that we're seeing is that up to 15% of grade 3 learners cannot read a single word, which is up to 25% in some languages like Xitsonga.
Yeah. We'll get deeper into just how severe the problem is, but before we drill further, the education system in South Africa divided between the public and private sector. How far did your research go? Did you go to not only public schools, did you go to private schools? How widespread was this?
So, I mean, the Reading Panel report is always concerned with the majority of the system. So it's only public ordinary schools. We don't look at private schools at all, just because we are concerned with the 90% of learners that are impacted by these results. Yeah.
So how severe is the problem then? Because it's one thing for a child to not be able to read or write in a particular language, but it's quite another if that learner is unable to read just completely, even in their mother tongue, because the encouragement is that children must be taught in their mother tongue, and it's easier, therefore, to absorb information, even in other languages, if the child has grounding in the mother tongue.
I mean, it's pretty concerning. First of all, because it's not only that policy encourages children to be taught in mother tongue. Most children are taught in their mother tongue from grades 1 to 3, right? 75%, and where you'll see the biggest anomalies are like Gauteng areas where there's a larger language mix. But for the vast majority of children in KZN, Eastern Cape, etc., they are taught in their mother tongue. And so what we're seeing here is reading for meaning is one thing, that's comprehension. Yeah. It's that in grade 1, what you're basically testing is letter sound knowledge. So do they know the letters of the alphabet? And really only 30% of learners, after a full year of learning, know those letters.
Where does the problem lie? Where does the problem lie? And I'm asking you this question because surely for the foundation phase, I'm not so sure we can blame the learners themselves. So the problem is with the instruction inside the class. So where is the problem?
I mean, definitely education is a really complex system, and there's a lot of things that impact what happens inside the classroom, socioeconomic issues. But from what we know that our teachers aren't prepared in a way that they can teach learners how to read. It's not as simple as we think. It is a science, right? And there's a lot of studies around what happens in initial teacher education, and that our universities just aren't preparing the teachers correctly. Nor do they have the kind of support when they're inside the classroom that will assist them in teaching learners in their specific mother tongue. Yeah. We also don't know what's in classrooms, right? There are no guaranteed materials in South African classrooms. The only thing we know of are learner workbooks in foundation phase classrooms, which are basically exercise books that learners can practice in. But to learn to read, to practice to read, you need reading books, and those just aren't guaranteed in South African classrooms.
You make a very big statement, and I'm saying it's big because you'll probably get reaction from the higher education and training sector. When you say the teachers aren't adequately prepared at institutions of higher learning, is that something that you have indeed investigated and come up with as part of the reason why we are in a crisis that we're in?
So fortunately, I didn't even have to investigate it because there's been a lot of studies done way before us. on not only how teachers are prepared, so there's very little time spent on literacy and literacy teaching, right? Universities are very theoretical in their approach, and even practical skills of in the classroom of how to teach learners to read, there's very little time spent on that. We also know, though, that currently the Council on Higher Education is reviewing all Bachelor of Education degrees from the foundation phase all the way to the FET phase. So this is a problem that has also been seen by the Council on Higher Education. They're going to review all these qualifications, and by the end of it, some will align, and at the very extreme end, there is the kind of threat that some qualifications may be taken away.
That's a very interesting reality. And I say that because conversations, I'm not saying that this is researched in any way, but I'm trying to gauge from you whether indeed this is part of the problem. Some people get into the education space as a last resort because they can't find work. That's not to insult the profession.
Absolutely.
Are you finding that?
What we can say is that there have been some studies based on benchmarking tests in the past that do show that applicants who apply for the Bachelor of Education are sometimes the lowest performing in their own literacy skills, in their own math skills. But what is surprising is that Bachelor of Education degrees are actually highly competitive. A lot of people apply for them. So we should somehow be able to cream and kind of get better applicants into the system. But yes, there is a little bit of research on the fact that it's generally lower performing learners that do apply for the B.Ed.
What would I know that this is not what you set out to investigate, but what would be a way to curb this from happening? How do authorities deal with this? Because some people are going to really take this as an insult, but there are professions where it's taken as a profession of last resort. I just need to find work. And people don't realize that this is an investment into the entire country. And so we have to take this seriously. What is it that can be done? Is it to raise salaries so that the people that get into the system we know are absolute professionals who are good at what they do?
I mean, it's complicated. There'll always be a little bit of remaining stigma around teaching. I mean, teaching is a profession, but we don't always treat them with the kind of respect they deserve as a profession. So there's a societal mix to that. We do know there is some work by the DBE themselves in trying to increase the qualifications they require for people who are on the Funza Lushaka bursary, so increasing the matric marks needed to get that bursary. We know that some universities are also increasing their point requirements for the Bachelor of Education degrees. So I think in general in South Africa there's a lot of competition for universities in South Africa for certain qualifications, and B.Ed is one of them. So I think it shouldn't be difficult for us to start, raising the standard a little bit of who is selected into the B.Ed.
Very quickly, what are you going to do with these findings? Who are you going to approach with them?
Well, with these findings, we're going to continue to advocate. I think our main thing as a reading panel is that we are a soft accountability mechanism. We always ask ourselves what needs to change for all children to be able to read for meaning. And I think the main thing right now is that we need a plan. We can't keep going into this blind. We know the problem. We understand it at its very root. And we need to start demanding from the DBE that we get a solid plan for what we're going to do for our kids.
Thank you very much for your time and insights. Siphumelele Lucwaba, the author of the 2030 reading panel.